Welcome everyone. In this video, I'll show you how to build a RESTful API using Python, Flask, and class-based views in Flask. In the previous video, I showed you how to build a RESTful API. However, we used functions and decorators that are provided in Flask. You might want to switch to class-based views if your project gets a bit larger and you want a bit more organization. So without any further ado, let me show you how you can do that. So first, we're going to build our users API again, and we're going to start by defining a class. So we're going to say users API, and here we're extending a class from Flask called method view. So we're going to import that. And the way class-based views in Flask work is they respond to the HTTP verbs. And what I mean by that is the HTTP verbs are get, put, patch, post, and delete. And essentially you're going to name all your methods like that. And that would mean that if a request comes in, for example, for a get, it will be handled by that method called get. The same for post, put, patch, and delete. So let's just do that. So we're going to define a method called get. And because in the HTTP protocol, we respond to both fetching all our resources, and in this case, all our users, and also a specific user using the same verb, that is get, we're going to pass in a second parameter called user ID, and we're going to default that to none. Because when we're fetching all of our users, we don't need a user ID, so that would be none. And when we fetch one, we will need to pass an ID. So we're going to say if user ID is none, meaning we haven't passed anything in, we're essentially wanting to get all our users. So we're going to say return results, and we're going to pass users. And that's it for fetching all of our users. However, if we have passed a user ID, we're going to check to see if we have found that user. So we're going to say user is equal to filter. We're going to pass in a predicate, a lambda, and we're going to say u, which will be each user in our iteration. We're going to grab their ID and we're going to check and see if it matches against what was passed. Here we need to pass the list of our users, and this will give us a filter, a Python filter. So we need to grab whatever we have in there. Like it could be more than one, but in our case we only need one, the first one. So we're going to call this function called next. And as a second argument, we're going to pass none, because if there's none found, we don't want to throw an exception. We want to handle that. So we're going to say if user is none, okay, we want to abort. And I'll explain what abort does. Abort, as we explained in the previous video, is a method or a function that is provided by Flask and is a helper to create an HTTP response with the provided status code that we add here. And we're going to add 404, meaning we have not found that user. Otherwise, we're going to just return our user. Great. Now, what we need to do here is we need to register, like we did with our function-based routing. We need to register this class, this whole class, right? Which is essentially a view. We need to register it with our application. So we're going to say user view, and we're going to say user API.as view. Okay, we're going to pass in a name. We're going to call it users API, and then we're going to register it. So we're going to say app.add URL row, and then we're going to say API /users, and we want to say you need to respond to this view function, which is our user view. And the methods are the HTTP verbs. And in this case, we need get and also post, because fetching all our users and also creating a user, we do not need a user ID. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to say again, app.add URL rule, API users, but in this case, we're going to say integer user ID. Okay. We're going to change the methods. Well, this one is going to stay the same because getting a single user and passing a user ID, we need get. Updating a user, partially updating a user, and also deleting a user. Okay. So we're converting our user ID to an integer, or we're at least trying to convert it. So let's go to Postman, and we're going to hit this endpoint, API users. Okay, seems we have a problem here. Let's have a look. What seems to be the issue? Maybe, okay, our server is not running. So we're just going to say Python 3. We're going to say app.py. There you go. That's running now. We're going to hit it, and there you go. We get 5 results, which is what we need. Let's also test the single. I'm going to say 4. There you go. We get user with ID number 4. If I say, I don't know, 44 doesn't exist, we're getting a 404, which is what we need. Okay, excellent. So now we're going to move on to the next verb, which is put, okay? Which is essentially means updating a user. We're going to grab the user ID. There's no default here because we always need the user ID. So we're going to grab the data that comes from the request. We're going to say request, and this is an object that comes from Flask. Here we got it. And we're going to say request.json. We need that attribute. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to try and find our user. So we're going to say user is equal to none. Because if we don't find it, it's going to stay as none. We're going to say for I, you enumerate our users. We're going to say if user.get ID is equal to the user ID, means we have found the user. And what we need to do here is we need to update our users. So we're going to say users of I is equal to a new dictionary. And we're going to pass all the existing data of the existing user. So we're going to say user, okay? And then we also need to add the new data that came in. Okay. So we're essentially updating our user. Ideally, we wouldn't do this for a production application because you don't want to add anything that comes in unvalidated, but we'll cover that in a later video. So for now, I'm just going to say user is equal to users of I. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to say if user is none, we're going to abort again like we did in the previous example. And then if we have found the user, we're just going to return, we're We're going to add a message, okay? And we're going to say our user was updated. And then we're just going to also pass the new user or the updated user. Okay. So let's go to Postman. Let's update user, let's say user with ID 4. We need to pass a body. I'm going to pass in random name and age. Before we do that, let's just fetch that user. There you go. It's got an age of 40 and a name of Jack Edwards. So if we update that, okay, seems to have updated. Let's check that. It has updated. Excellent. Now, we're going to implement creating a new user. So we're going to say post. We don't need a user ID. We just need to get the data from the request. So we're going to say request.json. Okay. And what we're going to do here is we're going to get the last user ID. So we're going to say last user ID because we want to increment, right? We're essentially simulating what the database would do. So we're going to say users, get me the ID. Okay. So we're going to say new user. We're going to add their ID because we don't want to get that from the front end. Okay, we're going to say last user ID and increment that. And then also give me the data. Excellent. And then we're just going to say return. Okay. And then we're just going to return our new user that we created. Okay. So we're going to add a message. And we're just going to say user created. I'm also going to pass the user that was created, and that's it. Of course, I forgot to add the user here. So I'm going to say users.append new user. Okay, that looks much better. Okay. So if we go to Postman, we try to create a user, John Jones, 33, send, that was created. If we go here and fetch all of our users, there we go, John Jones. Excellent. Okay, here we don't need a space. And the last method we want to implement is deleting. So we're going to say delete. Okay, not like that. Delete. We need the user ID. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to check to see if we can find the user. So we're going to say user is equal to none. Okay. And then we're going to say for I, you in enumerate users. If the user, if their ID is equal to the user ID, means we have found the user. Okay. So user is equal to you, and then I need to delete that user. So I'm going to say users of I, nope, users.pop, sorry, I. Okay, so we've deleted the user. And now we're going to say if user is none, in case it was not found, I'm going to say abort. 404. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to let the front end know that we've actually deleted the user. So I say user deleted. Okay. Excellent. Let's have a look and see if that works. Let's delete the first user. User deleted, and they're not there. If we fetch the first user, they're not there. Excellent. Now, for creating a user, we got a response of 200. Normally though, we should get a 201. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pass a second value here, and we're going to say 201, and this should theoretically fix it. So I'm going to go and create another user. James Corden 40 James. So if we post that, we're getting a 201. So that's fixed as well. So yeah, this is how it looks to create a class-based view REST API in Python and Flask. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Like it if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel because I'll be creating more videos like this. And yeah, add any comments you might have in the comment section, or any videos you'd like to see. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.